Today's video is on the day that the tornadoes came, which is the May 31st, 1985 US Canada tornado outbreak. Here's a GIF that I was able to find. I'm very proud that I was able to find this. There were 44 confirmed tornadoes in 8 hours, which is pretty crazy. This is an average of 5.5 tornadoes per hour. I could have rounded to 6, but I didn't want to. There were over 1,000 injuries reported, although it was more closer to around 800 to lower 900s, and around 90 people were left dead after this outbreak. There were 9 violent tornadoes, 8 of those being F4s, and there are 5 notables that we're going to be talking about in this short summary. An average tornado risk for May is seen here, and most definitely that includes Tornado Alley, and to a much lesser extent, Hoosier Alley. If you remember, that goes from just around slight portions of that straight line of Illinois all the way to around Pennsylvania, circles back around and incorporates just below the hands of the fingers of Michigan. And before we move on, I do also want to point out, obviously, the 2 pictures that you can see, that including all of the tornadoes that occurred in both Canada and the US. And in the US, we have a more detailed picture of the tornadoes that hit, more specifically Pennsylvania, and the Fujita strengths, and you can see even how they vary along here, something that is surprisingly well detailed. I'm very thankful for that. But the notables. The Arthur to Mount Albert, Ontario, Canada F4 killed 6, and we do not know how many people were injured. This tracked 115.1 kilometers over an hour and 10 minutes, and this is not even as a family. So I am guessing that it is number 7 right here, based off of length of track. A shopping center was partially collapsed because of the damage received from this F4, and this tornado tossed a library's roof just over 200 meters. This is a tornado that we do have a picture of, thankfully. The Cornelian, Ohio to Eagle Rock, Pennsylvania F4. Killed 16 with unknown injuries, presumably 0, and caused around $5 million in damage. And it tracked 90 kilometers, which is pretty long length. As you can see, it does appear to be quite rope-like, but heavily embedded in some rain bands. Although, granted, the funnel may not include the whole tornadic wind area. I can't be for certain if this tornado does or not. It is very hard to tell. What we do know is that in each and every single town and city that this tornado hit, it destroyed dozens of buildings. So, very consistent F4 strength. The one that we have the most pictures of is the Niles, Ohio to Wheatland, Pennsylvania F5. This is the only F5 of the outbreak, which injured over 300 and killed over 15 people. Over an hour and 10 minutes again, it tracked just around 115 kilometers. And by Wheatland, Pennsylvania, which it is seen here in both of these photos, it had reached a mile wide, which is 1.6 kilometers. By this point, at Wheatland, it had also recycled to being F5 as well. It had been before, but then it de-intensified for a little bit, approximately reaching F3 before ramping back up. The airport, an airport, I should just say, was directly hit with an airplane wing found 10 miles away. And I use Google Converter for that, so I don't know how far that is in kilometers. One of the last notables here, the Waterford, Pennsylvania to Panama, New York F4, which coursed 28 kilometers and supposedly caused 0 deaths and injuries. There is no known information on the casualties of this tornado. There's also no photos and no aftermath photos, despite this being 1985. But what we do have is a primitive Doppler image from the height of the outbreak, where there's at least 2 major tornadoes on the ground right now in that photo. What we do know from eyewitness accounts is that one farmhouse was described as being airborne, specifically by eyewitnesses, and also a dump truck was reported to be carried over 1.6 kilometers, which would be over a mile. The last notable here, which had 0 deaths and 0 injuries, but did destroy 13 homes, is the Cibola, Pennsylvania to Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania F4. This tornado carved a path that is 111 kilometers long. Again, 0 deaths and 0 injuries, thankfully. But this was a true monster. Even though it's not even an F5, it tore through a very dense forest throughout its entire life. It managed to trigger seismometers in the area, which is wow. The even then ancient WSR 57, which is the photo that we see here, detected a debris ball, which would be the center point here where it seems to be blank. That is absolutely insane. And surveyors are known to have said that the path of this twister is estimated to be at least 2.5 miles wide. Now, there is a big caveat to that being trees are not a very good indicator of how wide a tornado is. A tornado can rip up a tree, and then that tree can knock over some more trees. Also, not saying that this happened for the entire forest, but some of those trees could have definitely been dead and still standing, which does happen a lot. So they simply just fell over. But if that is true, completely true, then that would make it the largest tornado in the world, would be comparable to the 2013 El Reno tornado at 2.6 miles wide. As far as we know, we have very, very few tornadoes that have reached more than 2 miles wide, which is 3.2 kilometers. But yeah, that's just massive. So we might be asking the significance of this outbreak. The main part is that it was extremely out of place for something this severe. We're talking that this outbreak had a supposed chance of 1 in 75,000 to occur, which is a longer, quote, return period, quote, than the supers and super outbreaks. This tornado outbreak is simply a classic setup in a not so classic region. The top of the Iron Belt and Canada do not usually receive severe outbreaks or outbreaks at all. But as you can see, some very intense CAPE here, some classic almost 3,000 joules per kilogram, and a hand-drawn radar image GIF seen here at the middle. And last but not least, here are some other images from throughout the time that this low pressure was moving through. You can see some very fat capes, which is very surprising. But even to this day, some forested areas are still completely mangled and twisted up. And considering this was almost 40 years ago, that is pretty insane. But that is all that I have for you today. Thank you guys so much for coming to the end of the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.